Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video, and once again, going back into Heroes Jubilee 34 Blitz. This time, we're going to be taking on the boss battle. Only one boss battle, even though there's two, because one is like a giveaway. Everyone should get the max score here. It's not graded as hard as Boss Battle 2. This is where the bulk of your points are going to be coming from. But Boss Battle 2 does have a few quirks to it. Mainly, it's type neutral, so your nuker does not matter. It could be literally any kind of unit. I mean, she prefers physical units be used against her. Doesn't mean you have to. My highest score is with a magic team, so take that as you will. And also, you start the entire turn with a full hand of greens, so you don't need any turn 1 orb changers. You only need to use the orb changers that you need to activate whatever team you're attempting to build. So the first turn is a nice giveaway. So you could do a lot of things with the 6 hand of green. You could green buff them with Isis, you could future hand them with Mirai or Soka, or technically orange future hand them or something like that. There's a number of things you could do with 6 greens, but it just makes it easier for everybody. And then everything after that is random. So it is geared more towards newer players, honestly. The rewards are not super awesome for this Jubilee in general, so trying to be a sweaty tryhard in this doesn't really amount to anything because there are no crystals involved in the ranking. It's just the 2nd anniversary tickets from the banner, which, some people want and some people don't need. I personally fall into that latter category. But, I mean, we're currently rank 3 on the battle, so I think we're doing pretty good. So we're going to do 2 videos for this. The first video will be the sweatier teams, I guess, and then the second video will be a lot of older metas that run on greens or run certain ways and that you can attempt to get a score with, and then beyond that it's literally up to your box, right? As I said, it's type neutral. You're not required to bring anybody. The starting hand is set 6 greens. You could literally bring a bunch of free-to-play units and try the stage out, get a score, and dip. You could easily do that. It's only 6 turns. It does not take long. But that's pretty long for an intro. Let's just go ahead and jump into the sweaty fights. Alright, my highest scoring team is the Visions of Coleus team with Aqua instead of anybody else. I did attempt to use Warrior's Mind Violet for the ult resistance down, which would be another orb changer, but I got a little bit extra power out of this. And the fact that Aqua can rush alts is very useful for this run. So Lumi is stacking damage on 4 of these characters. Blanc is alt swapping plus the synergy resistance down. Since we are type neutral, her weakness strike doesn't matter here. But Aqua has the Pierce buff. We're going to be alting with the Rimuru ult, the regular ult, because it lowers defense, and then EX ults with Jaune and Violet. And the order of events that needs to happen for this to work is a lot of steps. A lot of RNG is required. I spent 2 days and change working on this one run that I got this morning. So it hasn't been the most pretty attempts, but we did finally get it. And it is, again, my highest scoring run. So, turn 1, we get a full hand of greens, as we discussed. However, what I didn't mention earlier in the intro was that she also binds your frontline units after you send your 6 greens. So, whoever you have up front on turn 1 when you send orbs, you're going to have that for turn 2 as well. So, you have to make peace with that. And what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the 6 greens and a relatively even spread of orbs that I can also change into blues. The charm I'm using on Lumi is the alt gauge on blue charm, because I want to ensure that we can get 2 EX ults here without too much difficulty. Unfortunately, we get this kind of hand, which we could use Violet, technically. Technically, we could, and her orb change, we would change 1 green, but not really super useful here. So what I end up doing is I end up just rainbowing, doing the Unity orbs, so I would send a full 6 still, except 3 of them are greens, and 3 of them are rainbow. Not in, normal sense the best way to go about it, but it is the only way. And I have to ensure that we are sending 6 orbs pretty much every single turn. 1 to keep our damage score up, and 2 to get maximum gauge. So here, We almost get a Rimuru ult, we almost kind of get a Violet ult, and we almost get an EX ult for Jaune. Which, you know, works, I guess. So here, now we get a good hand. The fact that we don't have a Rimuru ult is good. I don't want a Rimuru ult until turn 5. So him being 1 orb away is actually really, really nice. So, we're going to buff all 3 of our nukers here. We're going to get Rimuru out. And we're going to swap the ult away for Jaune. And then use the Violet orb change. And then we're probably going to use Aqua to rush the ult. Or, you know, in a different order. Either way, we're gonna do stuff. So Aqua comes in first. We're gonna rush Violet's ult because she has a higher attack stat because she has more dupes. And then we'll bring Blanc in. We'll swap the ult away. We'll use Violet's orb change, and that'll be a 6 and a blue. So now we are, you know, artificially getting extra ult gauge on this turn with Violet. And now we have the EX ult with Jaune as well, which is nice. We definitely need that. And now we can use the Aqua rush again next turn and have it work out fairly well. Especially since we don't get any orbs for Violet. So, this run does take a very, very large amount of RNG to accomplish. So the swap, alright, cool. We're going to bring Rimuru in, change those 2 orbs, or 1 orb actually, and then the Violet will swap the others. Boom, full hand of 6, and then we bring Aqua in. Aqua needs to be here on this turn, going into turn 5, because we need to use her Pierce buff on our 2 EX units and send Jaune and Violet away on that turn. That way they can hold that buff and we can get back up to 300 points and have enough to use everything else. So we're going to use the Aqua buff again, and then because we're using the ult gauge on Blue Charm, that gets us that last little bit for Violet right there, plus a lot of points, plus a double stack of Lumi next turn. So this is looking very, very good so far. And now, the only thing I need is I need to ensure that we have a Rimuru ult next turn when we bring him in. And we also need to have really good orb RNG here, which unfortunately we kind of do and we kind of don't. So we need a full 6 Hand of Blues on this turn, plus Rimuru orbs to get his ult. Like, that is the necessity, otherwise this run is dead. So we're going to use the Aqua buff, we're going to use the 2 stacks of Lumi, and then we're going to send not Lumi, but Violet and Jaune to the back for Blanc and Rimuru. So now we just need to ensure that we get blues here, and we're able to convert. So we're going to bring Rimuru in for Jaune, and we're going to pray, because we need him to change that 1 green orb. We have an Aqua orb coming in that's blue, so that's fine. It's just that we need this to work. We need the next orb after that future Aqua blue to be another blue, or to be a Jaune orb, one of the two, or some other way around it. And thankfully, it is a Violet blue orb, which means that we can do this. We don't need to use the alt swap anymore, because once Violet goes away, it'll just pull in that blue orb, and we save ourselves points here. So orb change, we swap Violet out for Blanc. We have quite a few orbs for Aqua, which is great, but don't really need it. And then we'll send it. That 1 Rimuru orb is enough to get his ult, and that's great. And we have a Blanc orb coming in, which means we have orbs for everybody to get swapped out, which is one of the big issues I ran into with this team, is I would get the run, and I would come to here, and I wouldn't have an orb for somebody. And I'd have to swap Rimuru out for like one of the other girls, and then I'd only have 2 ults, which is unfortunate. But here, we are perfect. We have 1 Blanc orb, we have 1 Violet orb, plus the Aqua orb plus the ult. So we'll use the Synergy Resistance down buff from Blanc. We don't need the Weakness Strike because it doesn't matter here. We'll bring Jaune in for Aqua or Blanc. It doesn't matter because we're going to have a whole hand of Rimurus, which honestly is not the best. I'd rather have a full hand of Blancs, but it's how it played out. And this is the only run where I was able to actually do it and get an ult and 2 EXs, so we took it. And then we will bring in Violet for Blanc. We've already used her buff, and now we have 220, which means we have enough to use the magic buff and both of Jaune's buffs and 1 more stack of Lumi. And then we will ult with Rimuru first, who's going to lower the defense of Shizu, and then we'll send the other ults. So Rimuru Violet. Jaune, because she has synergy power, is going to do more damage than Violet, even though Violet has more dupes. 203 right there. Violet does 1.29, and then Jaune does 1.52. And then, again, it'd be better if we had Jaune follow-up orbs, but there we go. That is my highest scoring team. We do 3.4 million damage right there. So high RNG, but high reward. And there we go. That is my best team, and now we will proceed to use a few other teams that are not quite as good. Still good, but not quite as good. Alright, the next team we're going to use is an Overlord-ish team. So Rimuru and Ainz are definitely here. We've got Jaune again for the 100% alt buff and Aqua for the Pierce buff. We now have Idle Shuna with the double alt swap ability, plus the synergy and synergy power. Shuna's going to be a better option here than the new Albedo Shizu, because 1, her buff is cheaper, and 2, the buff from Shizu has Weakness Strike, which doesn't matter in a type-neutral environment. And then Mirai is here for the Future Hand of Greens and the alt stat, or the attack stacking. And you see we're starting with Space Milim and Soe, so we start with 40 skill points. And that means that we can immediately use Mirai's Future Hand of Greens, which we already start with a full hand of greens. So essentially, we're going to get 2 guaranteed full turns of greens, and plus we have an alt swapper who's just doing double alt swap. So ideally, here you're going to have 3 EX alts. Aqua, Shuna, and... Mirai, Aqua, and Ainz, I believe? Maybe Shuna instead of Aqua. Don't quite remember. We'll find out together. But there's the Future Hand of Mirai orbs right there. Send the full greens, which means that next turn, even though we don't have a protector, but we're going to get a protector anyways, because we're the traits that we have active are going to bump us up into a protector level. And there's, guaranteed full hand of greens. Awesome. And now we get binded in, except for Mirai, who dodged it. Doesn't really matter, though. So we're going to use the Despair for the extra protection gauge on greens. We're going to reset both of the skills, and we're going to use the Future Hand of Greens again. And essentially, that takes us away from having or needing any orb changing on this team at all. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't think anyone has an alt. Maybe Aqua has an alt, actually. But even then, we have Shuna. Alright, no one has an alt. So there's 3 guaranteed, hands of greens already. Perfect. We got 3 Ainz orbs. Also great. So we're going to use the live mode now, the Despair again. And then we're also going to start rushing the EX alt for Ainz. Not that we really need to, but it also does put the Pierce Resistance debuff on Shizu, which, helps out a lot. And then again, the Future Hand of Greens. So we haven't needed any orb changing because they've always been Future Hands of Greens. Now we're getting to the point where we have alts, and we're going to have to use Shuna to swap them out. So it's kind of important for one of our characters to get an EX alt rather quickly here. So Ainz is very close. We're going to use the live mode and the Despair and the alt rush again. We're going to leave Ainz up front, though, because he is our big-time damage dealer, so he needs all of the stacks from the live mode that we can get on him, alongside all the stacks from Rimuru himself. So another Future Hand, and now we're going to send some of them away for Shuna. We're going to send Aqua away. So we've already guaranteed that the next orbs are going to be green, so that's fine. And then we're going to use the alt swap, and we're going to use the synergy buff now just for additional damage, because it's going to get reset next turn, and we're also going to make all those points back, so this is just free damage. So everyone's magic as well. So this is going fairly well so far. And it's pretty... there's not a lot of RNG here, because we're guaranteeing our hands of greens, so we don't need orb changers, unlike the first team where we needed a butt ton of orb changing and a butt ton of luck. But this team that I'm showing you now also doesn't score as high. There are ways to make it score higher. I just haven't explored it. I know this is the team that I think TM gave me, TMFM, who's another one of the sweats, so thank you to him for giving me this team. It's worked out for him because his score is higher, but he also has more dupes in the characters, so that's kind of the trade-off. I'm sure if he used my Visions of Coleus team, he would actually score higher too, but I don't know that for sure, so let's not take that as a prime example. But here, we're going to get the Mirai EX alt. We already have the Ainz EX alt, which is great. So now we just have to get Aqua in here at the end of the fight. So Aqua does not have an EX alt, unfortunately. And we are on the final nuke turn here. So we're going to have 1 alt and 2 EX alts. But Mirai and Ainz have been up here longer, so they've been able to get the stacks. There is a way for, one way that we can get more points is that we just get an Aqua alt very quickly, and by the time we send her away, she already has the EX alt holding in the back. That is definitely something that you could do to make this run better. But now we're going to synergy buff here and give it to Mirai and Ainz. Jaune will come in and use her 100% alt damage buff, and then we'll finally bring Aqua in, and we'll have enough points to use her Pierce buff and the Ainz magic/crit for Stern of Spirit and Commander, which technically Mirai is on Commander. So, I don't know who she's, because she's the leader of the Idolmaster troop, sure. She's the center. The center is always the leader for idols. I guess that's how we'll put that, but she gets crit. So 158 for Aqua, not great. Mirai does 733, and Ainz does 1.4 million, because he's got that extra personal magic damage buff, which is really, really giving him that extra bump in damage. And the 212k for the final orb, and that puts us just over 3 million. So not quite as much as my other team that did 3.4, but also a lot less RNG. So if you have the ability to run this team or some variation of it, I would probably just tell you to run this and call it a day instead of trying to bash your head against a wall using my team. Alright, a slight variation to the team we just showed. We're dropping Ainz, we're dropping Aqua, but we're adding in Octogram Lumi and the hero. So we still need Jaune, Shuna, and Mirai and Rimuru, but we've swapped out 2 other units, one of which you have no chance of having if you don't have her, which is Aqua, which is unfortunate. But the team essentially runs the same way, right? We're still going to have the future hand of greens with Mirai. We're starting with the 42 skill points so we can use it over and over again. We now have the rewind with the hero, which gives us an extra chance to use, a full hand of greens to get EX alts. And then we've got Octogram Lumi, who is constantly stacking up the alt damage up to 80% if she's skill fused, 60% if she's not. But that is a lot of outgoing damage as well. So here, we're going to leave it like this. We are going to get binded in, but we've already guaranteed the future hand, so not really a big deal. But I want to leave Lumi in, that way we can get her alt buff stack and the trait for her, which is giving us extra protection gauge. So it is unfortunate we're getting orbs for her, but fortunately, we don't get any orbs for her right here, which is great. We only get Jaune and Mirai, which are 2 of our nukers, which is very important. So now we've used the first stack of the alt buff from Lumi, we've reset, and now we're going to use the future hand again, just like the last team, just greens on greens on greens on greens. So this works out fairly well. And then we'll just keep moving forward. Boom. Alright, 15k for Jaune. And then the next hand, we have the Jaune alt now, but luckily we do have Shuna, who is able to swap that out. So now that Lumi's been reset, we can use her buff again. We can use live mode now, that we have excess points. And then Lumi's going to get out of here for Shuna. And we're going to try and get EX alts with Shuna, Mirai, and Jaune here. The rewind, we're going to do that here now, so that we're going to have an extra turn of future greens. And then we're going to bring Shuna in, and we have enough points to swap that away, swap that alt away, giving us a full 6-handed green, which means on the rewind, it's 6 more green. And, well, after we reset and use the future orb from Mirai first. Don't forget to do that. But now we're guaranteed that this hand and the turn 4.5 will be all greens, which will just help us get EX alts for everybody, or get us closer to, as long as the orb spread is generous to us. And then also, on the rewind, since we made back all those points, we can use the synergy buff and Jaune's buffs, because we have the points, and it's going to get reset next turn, and we're going to make it all back anyways. So here, Jaune buff, Jaune buff, Jaune buff. So we're lowering space resistance, we're giving her extra synergy buff, and we're giving synergy power to everybody else, which I think Shuna's giving more than what Jaune gives herself, because I think Jaune gives 30%, but Shuna's getting 40 to magic. So, didn't have to use that skill, but we did anyways. The space resistance down is what really matters for, for Jaune's orbs when she's doing the 200%. So 15, 20k, 20k, and the 200% here now does 42k. Alright. So there we go. We have 2 EX alts here, which is great, because now we can swap Mirai out. Because we still need the Shuna EX alt. But Mirai, like, we have 3 turns left. We're going to use her future hand, and then we're going to send her away, and that way we have 2 alts and incoming greens. And the live mode again to make sure that we can actually get the buff. So here, we'll do another stack of Rimuru, reset everything, and then we'll send people away. We'll bring Lumi back in and use her 3rd stack of the alt. And then we'll wait this turn out and try and get the Shuna EX alt as well. So Lumi comes in for Mirai, I believe. Or Jaune. Does she come in for Jaune? Oh, comes in for Jaune. Alright, never mind. Either way, I mean, we have their EX alts. Mirai, I guess, stays up front because we still need another time for the future hand. But it's okay. So here, boom, we'll alt swap. And use the 3rd stack of the alt buff. And then we'll bring the hero in for Lumi, who doesn't have any orbs now either. And now we have 4 Mirais and 2 Shunas. Synergy buff again, because we're going to make it all back and reset it anyways. It doesn't really matter. And then boom. Now, I misplayed here on this turn. I should have synergied with Jaune still up front. That way she would have it next turn, because Jaune's going to come in, and she would still have that synergy buff, and that would actually help our damage out quite a bit on turn 5, but we didn't. But at least we have all 3 EX alts now, which is the more important thing. So here, we're going to crit now, and we're going to send Mirai away, because we need to put the crit on one of the units that are going to be in the back, because otherwise there'd be no way for get it on all 3 characters when they're already up front. So Jaune will come in, we'll use the stack, and then we will send the live mode and future hand, and then Mirai will leave. So Mirai already has the crit buff on, so she can go away, and we can hold that in the back, and then reuse the crit buff next turn, and give it to Jaune and Shuna as well. So everybody on the nuke turn, when we're at full power, will have the crit. And here, we'll bring Lumi in for the final time. We'll use the alt swap, and then we will use the final stack of Lumi's alt buff. So now we are at the full permanent 80%, which will then combine with Jaune's 100%, and then her also 70% EX alt buff. So Jaune's going to have a lot of alt buff here for herself. So send 6, looking good. We got 3 and 3. So even if Shuna didn't have the EX alt already, she would definitely have it now. Also misplayed there. I should have sent Shuna last because she had the crit buff and Jaune did not. So few misplays here, but oh well. There's ways to increase my score, but this team also just won't score as high as my Visions of Coleus team. So now the final nuke turn. We have luckily 1 Lumi orb to swap out, so we can bring in the hero, give the crit to Jaune and Shuna, and then she can go away, and then we can safely bring in Mirai and use, I think, the live mode one more time, I think is what we have enough points for. So alt buff, synergy, live mode, yeah. And then 1 more stack of Rimuru, and we will full triple EX alt with this team. And we'll do pretty good damage. Pretty good. I think it's just shy of 3 million, but it's still a pretty good score, all things considered. And it doesn't have Aqua. It still has collab units that you may or may not have, right? Idle Shuna will come back. Mirai will not come back. 638 from Shuna. Mirai does 675, and then Jaune comes in and drops 928, almost 1 million. And then her final 200% orb does almost 100k. So yeah, 2.96 million damage right there. Still pretty good. Pretty good. And there we go. There's a 3rd team that you can use, and I got 1 more for you, I think, before we cut the video. Alright, the final team is going to be the New Year's Blessing team plus the hero. this is where the scores really start taking a dip. Like the first 3 teams, pretty good. High 2s to 3 million damage. This team and then the next video is going to be a lot of teams that really struggle to get even 1 million plus. This team, I think, still gets like 1.5 to 2 million. I can't remember. I think this is the first video for Boss Battle I recorded because it was, you know, last month's team, so it's still fresh on how to work it. But it's a burst team, definitely. So 5 turns, it's well within its wheelhouse, but it just cannot compete with big time 80-point skill buffs, right? It doesn't have that sort of power. It's not built for that sort of power. It has limitations. Shion's only giving 30 points a turn. She doesn't raise your skill cap, so you're not able to hold a lot of stuff. So things do get a little difficult here. So we are still going to get binded. We sent the full hand of greens. We did not use the skill point units to get like a full hand of guaranteed orange next turn. Oh, no, we did. Sorry. What the fuck am I talking about, man? We did. I am losing my mind after recording like 5 videos in one sitting right here. This is the last one I do today, and then I'll take a break before I go batshit crazy. So, there we go. Full hand of oranges right there, and then we're going to send it. I can't use Milim, though, because we're binded in, but we have Shion, so we can make next turn work for us. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to rewind and use the future hand of oranges and Shion. So rewind, the hero has an ult, I don't care. She goes away. Diablo comes in, and we're going to do a few things with him. We're going to buff the gauge and send all the orbs to Rimuru, because he's got the highest attack. So we're going to get a lot of stuff out of these incoming oranges that we make. So we got a 4 and 2, but now we can bring Milim in for those 2, after we rainbow these 4 for Rimuru, and then we're going to be looking pretty good here. So Milim in, we'll use the future oranges, excellent, and then we'll use Shion, change those 2 blues, but now the rewind kicks in, and now we're going to have 2 turns of oranges, right? So the rainbows plus the oranges here, that gets Rimuru's EX ult, easy peasy lemon squeezy, and gets Milim very close. And then next turn, we're not going to have any ults coming in because it's a rewind turn, and then hopefully we can get some Shinsha orbs and Milim as well, which I believe we only get Milim and Shinsha orbs, which is the best way I could have asked for. So here, we're going to get 3 EX ults. Awesome. We have double stack of Shion, not that it really matters, and then we'll send these 6. 3 EX ults across the board. Rimuru already has his attack buff, so he's going to be able to hold that next turn, even though it was kind of wasted because we didn't actually send any orbs for him. But his weakness strike wouldn't have mattered because, again, we are type neutral. So here, we're going to use the alt buff, and well, we're going to use the buffs for everybody. And we're going to full nuke now. Now, early. That way we have access to all 3 of the buffs and a full hand of oranges. And we'll save a Shion for next turn. So 217 with Milim, alright. Shinsha, 297, okay. Rimuru, 455, so we're already into the 1 million range, which is nice. And then we still have 2 more turns to do damage and try and build up some other ults. Milim has an ult already, that's cool. If we can get a Rimuru ult here, that would also be quite nice. But that was the full buff turn right there, so we're not going to get too much more damage out of this. I don't even, does it, I'm not sure if it even breaks 3 or 2 million, if I remember correctly. Now I'm trying to think of what we should do. So here, we're going to use the gauge buff again, and I believe the send with Diablo to give it all to Rimuru. Because we would get a full hand of Rimuru. We would get 6 orbs here. But I think we're going to go for the Shinsha ult instead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, okay. So that's what we're going to do. Instead of attempting to get the EX ult with Rimuru, we're just going to get 3 ults, because Milim already has an ult in the back. We'll have Shinsha, we'll have Rimuru, and we'll be able to do a few things here. Gauge buff? Send away. No, okay, we're going to send the ult away. See, this is what happens when I record things like 3 days in advance. What are we doing here? All right, okay, we're original plan. Awesome. Okay, so we have 3 alts again. We're not gonna have enough points to do like the full-time buff, but we'll have enough to at least use the Shinsha buff, which will help everybody because it's the alt damage plus the crit damage. And it's much more impactful than the Milim buff. So here, yeah, I'm just trying to see. It's like we only have 100 points now. We're not getting any more passively from Xion. Unfortunate. So we'll come in. Awesome. Shinsha buff. Xion one more time, and that'll put us somewhere into like the 1.9 or 2 million range. Alright, let's see what we get. 3, 4, 5, 6. Milim, 61, sad. Shinsha, 118, okay. Rimuru, 140, okay. Alright, and looks like we are not able to hit 2 million here. Yeah, did we hit 1.9? We didn't even hit 1.9, but there we go. There's a New Year's team. Not the most optimized thing for this kind of stage, but definitely can put some work in if you did summon last month. But there's 4 teams you can use to get decent scores in boss battle. The next video will have teams that do not get decent scores, but are definitely older teams that you may have just sitting in the box now. But let me know if this video helped you out. That's it for me. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.